Hello and welcome. This is part 2 of the Richard Green Affidavit. I will leave part 1 in the description below. And as always, I will leave the links to these original documents in the description below. Also in this video, we will be watching a portion of the pre-trial hearing that took place today, January 31st, 2025. It was really compelling, and it is relevant to this affidavit. And I did watch part of the hearing today. I listened to part of it while I was working, but I did not finish it until the end. And according to the comments I've read online, a lot of people are happy about Robert Alessi's testimony today, his comments that he made at the pre-trial today, which I have yet to listen to, so we can listen to Robert Alessi's arguments together. So this affidavit, again, is from Richard Green, and I'm going to reread the sentence that part 1 included. And it reads, the USB drive containing the forensic image was sent to USF by Assistant District Attorney A.D.A. Lally with the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office by way of Trooper Guarino with the Massachusetts State Police. Upon receipt, the USB containing the image of Jennifer McCabe's cell phone was assigned an internal evidence number with USF evidence number 22398-304. Notably, the USB drive containing the forensic image of Jennifer McCabe's cell phone failed to include the associated documentation containing the hash value, which is a well-known mechanism used to validate the data and ensure that it has not changed or otherwise been manipulated. Such a key sentence in this affidavit, guys. Continuing, after personally insisting that the Massachusetts State Police provide the hash value associated with this data, USF was eventually provided with a PDF containing the purported hash value, and the value listed within that PDF matched the gray key image file of the cell phone in question. So again, guys, as I said in previous videos, as well as the last one, Richard Green was the only digital forensic expert in the Karen Read case who had the integrity to request the hash values in order to verify the data extractions. Again, unlike Ian Whiffen, who again, Ian Whiffen owns RX, and Ian Whiffen also works for Celebrate. So Ian Whiffen's got two major extraction data companies, data extraction companies under his belt. His own RX, and he's got a lead position in Celebrate. And yet the dude, with all his credentials, Ian Whiffen with all of his credentials and his leadership in the industry, did not verify the freaking hash values. Just makes zero sense to me, guys. It makes zero sense. But again, this is the Karen Read case. This is the Twilight Zone. This is what happens when corruption rules the day. Continuing with the affidavit. Looks like number 11. After obtaining the full file system extraction of the data contained on Jennifer McCabe's iPhone 11, the data images were processed and reviewed with Celebrate Physical Analyzer V7.61.0.12 and I believe it's, Axiom Forensics V6.11. I guess the V stands, represents version. Okay, continuing. Opinion number 1. It is my opinion, based on a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, that the user of Jennifer McCabe's cell phone searched, quote, "Hoslong to die in cold," end quote, at or before 2:27 minutes and 40 seconds a.m. His number one opinion, guys. His first opinion. I have to read it again. It is my opinion based on a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that the user of Jennifer McCabe's cell phone searched, quote, "House long to die in cold," end quote, at or before 2:27 a.m. Continuing, number 12, in my professional experience, an analysis of a device's internet search history often gives valuable clues as to the user's intent or knowledge surrounding an incident. I conducted a review of the search history information obtained from Jennifer McCabe's iPhone 11 and observed the following significant artifact from the morning in question as reported by Celebrate Physical Analyzer version 7.61.0.12 and Axiom Forensics version 6.11 in parentheses, which were the most recent versions of the respective tools at the time I conducted my initial analysis. And pulling away, guys, I remember that during the trial, Richard Green used the most recent versions of the applications, of the tools, and the Commonwealth, guys. The Commonwealth, the MSP and their so-called experts, they did not use the most recent versions. So not only did Richard Green, this brilliant, wonderful man, Richard Green, not only did he hash verify the data extractions, the cell phone extractions, he also used the most recent versions of the tools he needed in order to extract the data. Okay? Richard Green has far more credibility and far more integrity than anybody who so-called investigated this case in Canton or at the MSP or anybody in the Norfolk County DA's office. Richard Green blows all of them out of the water. Okay, continuing. Out of the water. Okay, continuing. Search term. House long to die in cold. Last viewed date and time. January 29, 2022. 2:27 a.m. and 40 seconds. Continuing. URL provides google.com search house long to die in cold. Seeing the URL, guys. Okay. It's so dark is what it is. Like, okay, guys, like for real, without all of Adam Lally and Hank Brennan's lies, what's the big picture here? It's that Jennifer McCabe made that search at 2:27 a.m. and that's the URL. And it is dark, guys, that she made that search at 2:27 a.m. when she could have been saving John O'Keefe's life. Continuing. Source, Safari suspended state tab. State, deleted. Type, WAL or wall. Number 13, Celebrate processing. In Celebrate Physical Analyzer version 7, the 2:27 a.m. quote, house long to die in cold, end quote, search not only showed up in the web history, but Celebrate further refined the results and included it in the searched items artifact section. It was marked as a quote deleted end quote record with an adjusted last viewed timestamp of January 29, 2022 at 2:27 a.m. UTC 5, noting the inconsistencies in Celebrate's reporting between the UFED report generated by version 7.53 and Celebrate's Physical Analyzer version 7.61. I contacted Celebrate's technical support to inquire if they could provide additional information about this artifact. And pulling away, guys, I'm cutting off the version numbers just to make it quicker. So again, the original link to this article will be in the description below. Okay, continuing. Celebrite's technical support staff indicated that they believed the artifact was reliable and that no issues had been brought to their attention. Pretty good, guys. He's covering himself. He's covering his own ass. He's, to me, again, Richard Green is being thorough, and he's got integrity. He wants to get down to the truth about that search. Continuing, on April 22nd, 2024, the Commonwealth's expert Ian Whiffen emailed me stating, quote, the last visited time shown in PA will be getting removed from the artifact in the next available version of Physical Analyzer, provides the version, end quote. After the start of trial in this case in late May of 2024, Celebrite released Insiet's Physical Analyzer, version 10, which removed the 2:27 a.m. timestamp from its processing of the artifact. Shortly after trial on July 22, 2024, Celebrite released its Celebrite Physical Analyzer Standard version 7.69, which also removed the 2:27 a.m. timestamp from its processing of the artifact. Notably, Celebrite is a company that markets itself as providing, quote, digital intelligence solutions for law enforcement, end quote, and is used by over 6,900 public safety agencies in over 100 countries worldwide. Although I am aware that Celebrite recently changed its analyzer program so that it no longer reports on the timestamp of this particular artifact, I have not misinterpreted the data. So in this paragraph, guys, pulling away from the affidavit, Richard Green directly responds to the prosecution, namely Hank Brennan's allegations in that motion to exclude Richard Green. He directly responds to it because, again, in that motion, the prosecution, again, Hank Brennan, alleges that Richard Green misinterpreted the data and that with the newer version of the Celebrite tool, the 2:27 a.m. timestamp is removed. It's like the prosecution is implying that the Celebrite tool, the Celebrite application is the only application, the only viable application or tool to extract this data. But if it's removing the 2:27 a.m. search, is it really? It's just peculiar to me. It's like, guys, is Celebrite in on the cover-up? Like, what the hell is going on? Continuing, number 14, Axiom Processing. Axiom is an application product offered by Magnet Forensics, which is a competitor of Celebrite. Best practices in digital forensics require forensic examiners to view data and artifacts with more than one tool. Really good. Really good. I'm going to read that again, guys. Best practices in digital forensics require forensic examiners to view data and artifacts with more than one tool. And guys, was more than one tool mentioned in the prosecution's motion to exclude Richard Green? It doesn't sound like it to me. I only remember them referring to Ian Whiffen, who again to me has zero credibility, and Celebrite, whom I am now questioning Celebrite. Continuing. Therefore, I also processed the image of Jennifer McCabe's iPhone using Axiom version 6.11. Axiom version 6.11 reports the 2:27 a.m. search artifact for, quote, House Long to Die in Cold, end quote, with a last viewed time of 2:27 a.m. and 40 seconds in the, quote, Safari suspended state tabs, end quote, section. Shortly thereafter, I contacted Magnet Forensics technical support to see if additional information could be provided regarding this artifact. I was advised by technical support that the 2:27 a.m. timestamp indicates that the search would have occurred sometime at or before the 2:27 a.m. time indicated. And there's a number 2 for a footnote, so I'll go down there in a moment. I'm going to keep reading though. Since my initial analysis, USF has upgraded to the more advanced Axiom Cyber Physical Analyzer version 8.8, which was released on December 17, 2024. So fairly recently, guys, last month. So Richard Green is utilizing a new version of the program, of the tool that was released just last month. Okay, continuing. This version of Axiom continues to report the above artifact with an even more precise last viewed date and time of January 29, 2022 at 2:27 a.m. and 40 seconds. Oh, it goes further. 2:27 minutes, 2:27 minutes, 40 seconds, and then even part of the second, 4:65 a.m. Holy crap, guys. Holy crap. So, again, Richard Green dotted all of his I's and crossed all of his T's, and he covered his ass, and he used multiple tools in order to determine when exactly the Haas Long to Die in Cold search was used. And he used the most recent version of Axiom as of December 2024, the most recent, and it still gives him the same result. Not only the same result, but a more precise result to the fraction of a second. Okay, continuing. In the Safari suspended state tab, marked as, quote, deleted, end quote. Moreover, Axiom's user manual describes this artifact as follows, quote, Safari suspended state tabs, last interaction date, time, UTC, year, month, and date, end quote, as, quote, the date and time of the current tab state when it was last interacted with on the local device. This date and time will reflect when the user has last interacted with this tab in Safari, or if the tab auto-refreshed on the local device only, end quote. That's really good. That's so good, because during the trial, the prosecution's so-called digital forensic experts, implied that there was no way to know for sure because of all the multiple tabs that were open. So they couldn't really know for sure, but it was like more than likely the search occurred after 6 a.m. conveniently, according to the prosecution's, quote, experts. But this is excellent in that it is more precise. The ambiguity has been removed here, that it can actually determine. I'm going to read the sentence again. This date and time will reflect when the user has last interacted with this tab in Safari, or if the tab auto-refreshed on the local device only. Really good. Okay, continuing. In order to validate this timestamp, I looked at numerous examples of web sessions on Jennifer McCabe's device, including URLs containing Raining Men, CantonMA.org, HockemockSports.com, and EasternBank.com. In all of these instances, the browser state.db entry appears at the end of the session. This is consistent with how Magnet describes this artifact. Really good. Gosh, yeah. Okay, continuing. It's awesome, and it's reassuring. It's like of course Richard Green has integrity, but to see him, to see his words, to see his efforts written on paper, it's further validating. It's like it's a cure for the insanity that we have witnessed from the lying prosecution and lying Ian Whiffen. Continuing, number 15. In order to confirm the accuracy of this search event as reported in Celebrite Physical Analyzer version 7.61 and consistently throughout multiple versions of Axiom, I then independently performed a low-level analysis of the artifact, which was located in the browser state.db-wal, quote, in parentheses, write ahead file, end quote. Write-ahead files are temporary in nature and show the location where data is written before commitments to the main database are made. The particulars of this artifact are as follows. Really good, so thorough. Continuing, location provides location of the Safari browser state.db-wal, database record ID, raw time data, time converted to UTC, Sunday, January 29, 2022, 7:27 a.m., adjusted to local time, January 29, 2022, 2:27 a.m. Excellent. Excellent. And I'm going to read the footnote. If we remember where the footnote was up here in this sentence, I was advised by technical support that the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp indicates that the search would have occurred sometime at or before the 2:27:40 a.m. time indicated. So the footnote for that sentence is down here, number 2. The footnote reads, I would also note that Trooper Nicholas Guarino's report labeled, quote, NFK-CAN-MFP-CNFB.pdf, end quote, specifically mentions that he also used the Axiom product to process the forensic image of Jennifer McCabe's iPhone. I personally tested the earlier version of Axiom, which would have been used in February 2022, and determined that the 2:27:40 a.m. version of the, quote, how song to die in cold, end quote, search was reported by Axiom as having a last viewed time of 2:27:40 a.m. Axiom has a similar feature to Celebrite with their creation of a, quote, portable case, end quote. This exculpatory information was never turned over to the defense guys. That's a crucial footnote, guys. I wish he would have just left it in the in his main declarations here in the affidavit. To me, it's crucial information. It's too crucial to be left at a footnote. That Trooper Nicholas Guarino, the same guy who told everybody that Karen Reed's cell phone connected to John O'Keefe's Wi-Fi at 12:36 a.m., Guarino used the Axiom product, and Richard Green, because he's a badass and because he's thorough and because he loves his job, Richard Green used the same Axiom version from February 2022, the same Axiom version that Nicholas Guarino would have used in February 2022. And Richard Green came up with the same exact result, which begs the question, what the hell was Trooper Guarino lying for? It could only be that Trooper Guarino is a liar. On top of everything else he's done. You know, we know all the bullshit he pulled with Aiden Kearney too. Like, Trooper Guarino is a liar. And such a crucial sentence here, guys. This exculpatory information was never turned over to the defense. Richard Green, guys, Richard Green is a witness in the Karen Read case. Richard Green as a real digital forensic expert. Richard Green is a witness to a Brady violation in the Karen Read case. I just got chills. I'm angry. I'm angry for John O'Keefe, and I'm angry for Karen Read. And I'm angry for Aidan Kearney because he was trying to expose all of this, and they locked him up, and they've continued to attempt to lock him up. And they've sent their sycophants after Aidan Kearney in various ways. Continuing with the affidavit. I used 3 additional forensic tools to conduct a low-level analysis of the artifact in question, including Belkasoft X, Sanderson Forensic Browser, and ArtX2, in parentheses, a research-based program created by the Commonwealth's expert Ian Whiffen. Yes! I told you guys, Ian Whiffen owns ArtX. Okay, continuing. Which only has approximately 600 users worldwide. I don't know, guys. I don't know if that was like a low-key throwing shade from Richard Green. I don't know if Richard Green is low-key throwing shade at Ian Whiffen, but hey, if he is, it's justified and I stand behind it. Good job, Richard Green. Okay, I'm just saying, guys, like, you reap what you sow. If you're going to stand out there and proclaim yourself as an expert, and you're going to be an owner of ArtX, and you're going to be in a lead position for Celebrate, and you're going to testify on the stand, and your testimony could lock someone up for something they didn't do, and you're not even going to verify the extractions using hash values, Ian Whiffen, you get whatever the universe thinks you deserve. Continuing. All 3 of these programs show data consistent with the search for, quote, Hosong to die in cold, end quote, with a last viewed time field of 2:27:40 a.m. being found on record 40:28. All times listed have converted to Canton, Massachusetts local time UTC 5, unless otherwise noted. Thus, I was able to independently verify using additional forensic tools that the last viewed time, date, and fact of the search was accurate. Excuse me. And I this reminds me of a video I made about Richard Green's testimony. And in that video, I said Richard Green used the scientific method to determine that Jennifer McCabe made that search at 2:27 a.m. on January 29, 2022. And I say that, if you understand the scientific method, I say that because Richard Green right here tells us that he used at least 3 different tools. I believe he even stated during the trial he used 5 different tools. And on top of that, guys, again, on top of that, he used the Axiom version that Trooper Guarino would have used in February of 2022. So Richard Green is using present day versions of these tools, the most recent versions of these tools, and he also used the older version of these tools, and all tests that he ran gave him the same conclusion. It is a scientific experiment that he tried at least 5 times, and he had the same result all 5 times, guys. It is with scientific certainty. It is with literal scientific certainty. He used the scientific method. It is actually with scientific certainty that Jennifer McCabe made that search at 2:27 a.m. And remember that motion, guys? Remember all that bullshit that was written in the motion? The misrepresentation of facts? The deliberate misrepresentation of facts in this case? You know, it's like there are snakes in this case, and then there are people with integrity. And for whatever reason, guys, for whatever fucking reason, the people who have the most integrity in the Karen Read case just so happen to be on the defense side. I can't think of a single person on the prosecution side who had integrity besides the medical examiner, Scorty Bello. And even to me, even her testimony was limited on purpose. Even her testimony to me did not provide enough information on purpose. Remember, she didn't talk about the dog bite and claw marks. And if she were a real medical examiner, someone with real experience, she would have seen those dog bite and claw marks from the get. She would have known immediately what those marks on John O'Keefe's arm were. And if you guys can think of anyone else on the prosecution side who you think has integrity, please let me know. Please let me know. I can't think of anybody else. I really can't. Maybe that officer from, Brighton PD? I forget. The officer who said Karen Read's rear taillight was cracked and it was missing a piece, but it was not entirely broken. Was that Dighton Police? I don't know. I'm forgetting. Anyway, so yeah, those 2 people who testified on behalf of the prosecution. Can't think of anybody else. You know, guys, what I'm saying is it really is a war between a team that has integrity and a team that is entirely, completely corrupt. Continuing with the affidavit. Number 16, it is my opinion based on a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that the user of Jennifer McCabe's cell phone searched, quote, "how long to die in cold," end quote, at or before 2:27:40 a.m. I have also consistently reported the existence of 2 additional search artifacts found on the forensic image of Jennifer McCabe's iPhone, which suggest that the user of Jennifer McCabe's iPhone 11 made 2 additional similar searches later that morning on January 29, 2022. And he lists the date and time. So January 29, 2022, 6:23:51 a.m. How long T.I. die in CIKD, and January 29, 2022, 6:24:18 a.m. Hasang to die in cold. So not only was Richard Green able to discern that there was a search made at 2:27:40 a.m., but that those searches were separate and apart from the searches Jennifer McCabe made later at 6:23 a.m. and 6:24 a.m. And if you guys remember, the prosecution's so-called digital experts who testified at the trial, Ian Whiffen and Hyde, they sort of both alleged that the only search she would have made was at 6:24 a.m. or 6:23 a.m. They both alleged that the 2:27 a.m. search never happened. Continuing. Opinion number 2. It is my opinion, based on a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, that the 2:27:40 a.m. search artifact for, quote, "How long to die in cold," end quote, was deleted by either deliberate user interaction or manual post-imaging manipulation of the data by some unknown individual. Amazing and powerful. Richard Green has a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that search, the "How long to die in cold" search, was deleted by either deliberate user interaction or manual post-imaging manipulation. And both are bad, guys. Both are terrible. The first one suggests that Jennifer McCabe deleted it to cover her ass. And the second one implies that it was done by the investigators, that the investigators manipulated the post-imaging. Continuing, number 17. It is uncontested that the January 29, 2022, 2:27:40 a.m. search artifact for, quote, "How long to die in cold," end quote, found in record 4028 is in a, quote, "deleted state," end quote. Databases contain tables with numerous fields, and in some cases there is a programmed field entry to indicate whether a record is live or deleted. With regard to the browserstate.db, which is the database at issue here, there is no such field to indicate whether a particular record is live or deleted. However, based on the characteristics of the data contained within the associated write-ahead log, in parentheses WAL file, the forensic tools indicate that the 2:27:40 a.m. quote, "How long to die in cold," end quote, search found in record 4028 is in a, quote, "deleted state," end quote. Really good. And again, this is Richard Green directly responding to the allegations, the declarations in the prosecution's motion to exclude Richard Green. Richard Green directly responds to the allegation that the search was not deleted. Remember, Hank Brennan, the prosecution, was claiming that it was not deleted. And this is Richard Green saying, no, I have proof that it was deleted. I can tell you with scientific certainty that it was deleted. Continuing, number 18, there are several reasons why data may appear to be in a deleted state, which include a deliberate user interaction, an automated function of the operating system, a system application or operating system update, a malfunction of the operating system or hardware, or manual post-imaging manipulation of the data itself. I address each of these potential scenarios in turn. Letter A. This is superb. This is superb. Okay, guys, if any of you ever get framed for a crime, you gotta look up Richard Green because he's got your back. All right, continuing. Letter A. Manual post-imaging manipulation of the data. Typically, data collections have an associated hash value, which is unique to that set of data. The hash value is created using an algorithm and is a well-known mechanism used to validate the data and ensure that it has not changed or otherwise been manipulated. Okay, guys? Again, reading it again because it's so important and we should all be educated about this. The hash value is created using an algorithm and is a well-known mechanism used to validate the data and ensure that it has not changed or otherwise been manipulated. And as I said earlier, guys, the data doesn't mean anything if it's not hash verified. Ian Whiffin's testimony during the first trial was useless. It was a waste of everyone's time. And again, it also shows you Ian Whiffin's true character in this industry. Continuing. In this case, USF was originally supplied with a forensic image of Jennifer McCabe's cell phone, which was created with a tool known as Gray Key from Assistant District Attorney Adam Lally with the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office by way of Trooper Guarino with the Massachusetts State Police. However, and remarkably, the associated documentation containing the hash value needed to validate the image was not provided with the initial USB drive containing the forensic image of Jennifer McCabe's cell phone. I'm going to read that again because that's also really important. However, and remarkably, the associated documentation containing the hash value needed to validate the image was not provided with the initial USB drive containing the forensic image of Jennifer McCabe's cell phone. And because Richard Green is not an idiot, he asked for the hash value. He personally asked for it. Continuing. This was incredibly unusual. Yes, thank you, Richard. Fucking A. This was incredibly unusual, guys. It wasn't just, it was a mistake by the prosecution, or, well, maybe they forgot to include it. No, according to Richard Green, who again has testified as a data forensic expert in previous trials, according to Richard Green, who again used the scientific method to determine that Jennifer McCabe made that search at 2:27 a.m., according to Richard Green, this was incredibly unusual. Total cover-up, guys. The more we read about this case, the more we can all rest assured that it is a cover-up. Continuing. In all my years working as a forensic examiner, this is the first time I have ever received a forensic image of a phone without the corresponding hash value. I just got chills again. Poor Richard Green, he's just there to do a job, a very objective job that is exact science. It's scientifically based and he can't manipulate it even if he wanted to, It's an objective practice, and it involves no opinions, no politics, no biases, it's just exact science, computer forensic science. And he's here being a scientist, doing what he's doing, being an expert. And not only does he witness a Brady violation, he is also taken aback by the fact that the prosecution, the DA's office, via Trooper Guarino, completely leave out the hash values. Like, imagine being Richard Green. Like that you have to, like, that you get involved in these cases, and whether you want to or not, you are impacted by it because you know something is severely wrong here. You know someone is trying to cover something up. Continuing. After personally insisting that the Massachusetts State Police provide the hash value associated with this data, USF was eventually provided with a PDF containing the purported hash value, and the value listed within that PDF matched the gray key image file of the cell phone in question. However, as Mr. Whiffen acknowledges in his report, the Celebrite program cannot validate the data because the value is unsigned. In other words, the gray key image of Jennifer McCabe's cell phone could have been manipulated, then rehashed after the manipulation, and still show the same resulting hash value included in the PDF file. Wow. Really good work on Richard Green. Again, just so thorough and so full of integrity that he's doing the absolute best job that he can do. Unlike Ian Whiffen, okay, continuing, typically forensic examiners are provided with the raw image file and the associated hash value documentation together. After validating the hash value, I would then accept that the data has not been manipulated. Here, however, the hash documentation was not provided with the raw image of the cell phone. Instead, it was withheld from the defense. As a forensic examiner having received hundreds of image phones over the course of my decades-long career, this was unprecedented. Yeah. So this is a case that Richard Green will never forget. And it's a case that I will never forget. Continuing. In addition to law enforcement's failure to initially provide the hash documentation associated with the raw image of Jennifer McCabe's cell phone, there were additional anomalies within the processed data that are suggestive of manipulation as reported by tools such as Celebrite and Axiom. I'm going to read that again, guys. In addition to law enforcement's failure to initially provide the hash documentation associated with the raw image of Jennifer McCabe's cell phone, there were additional anomalies within the processed data that are suggestive of manipulation as reported by tools such as Celebrite and Axiom. Continuing, these anomalies, in parentheses, discussed in further detail below, along with other anomalies in this case, including law enforcement's failure to properly document the chain of custody of items of evidence, inconsistencies in official reports and testimony regarding the collection of evidence, law enforcement's failure to properly photograph and document the evidence, and the destruction of other crucial electronic data are all suggestive of post-imaging manipulation. Yeah. Again, I said this in the last video. If anybody is following Ian Whiffen or going to Ian Whiffen's lectures, you might want to think about that again. Continuing. B. Malfunction of the operating system or hardware. In my experience, iPhone hardware and the iOS operating system are very reliable. In this case, there is no data or evidence to suggest that a malfunction of the operating system or hardware caused the deleted record. Excellent. Excellent. Letter C. System application or operating system update. The structure of databases can change from version to version of the iOS system or associated applications. Upon analyzing Jennifer McCabe's cell phone, in parentheses, i.e., the cell phone at issue, I was able to determine that the iOS on this device was updated to version 15.2 on January 24, 2022. This update occurred before the record in question was generated on January 29, 2022, and would not have been a cause of the deletion. Excellent. Continuing, letter D, automated function of the operating system. The artifact in question is found in a write-ahead wall file. The data is written to the temporary wall file in order to aid in speed and ensure data integrity. You can think of this as the database being a series of Excel spreadsheets where the data is structured into fields, rows, and columns, and the wall file as a notepad text document where you are quickly adding data that you intend to eventually write into the Excel spreadsheet. The mechanism for writing the data from a temporary wall file to the associated database is called checkpoint. Quote, checkpoint. Here, with regard to the 2:27:40 a.m., quote, how long to die in cold, end quote, wall file at issue, the data establishes that the last checkpoint occurred on January 28, 2022 at 7:39 and 3 seconds a.m. Therefore, the deleted state of the 4028 record is not a function of the wall file being written to the database because the last checkpoint occurred the day before on January 28, 2022. I am aware of no internal mechanism for spontaneous record deletion. Excellent, Richard Green. Continuing, Mr. Whiffen similarly concedes in his report that he is unaware of any internal mechanism of record deletion. Excellent. Continuing, letter E, deliberate user interaction. As stated above, there is no internal field within the browser state.db database to indicate whether the artifact in question was user deleted, in parentheses, i.e., a column labeled, quote, deleted, end quote, with a corresponding entry of, quote, yes, end quote, or, quote, no, end quote. No such field exists in the browser state.db database. However, as explained in further detail below, additional anomalies found on the phone strongly suggest that this data was either the result of deliberate user interaction or post-imaging manipulation. Really good Richard Green, just he's like a hero of the day. Excellent work. Continuing, number 19, my forensic analysis of the image of Jennifer McCabe's cell phone uncovered numerous anomalies or unusual deviations from what is standard, normal, or expected in a typical case. The following anomalies further support that the artifact in question was deleted either through user interaction or through post-imaging manipulation. All right, guys, here we go with the anomalies. Anomaly 1, the most up-to-date version of Celebrite Physical Analyzer, NCITS, I wish I knew how to say that, 10.4 reports 4,560 searches with only one search being marked as, quote, deleted, end quote. The only search marked as, quote, deleted end quote, in the most up-to-date version of Celebrite Physical Analyzer is the, quote, how long to die in cold, end quote, search found in browserstate.db, record 4028. This strongly suggests that this search was targeted for deletion. Compelling anomaly number 2. The tab ID for record 4028 provides a serial number. This number is unique to the tab in question and would have been used for all URL history in that specific tab within this particular database. The Commonwealth has claimed that the actual website being visited during this period was, quote, hockomocksports.com, end quote. However, listen in, guys. However, the tab ID recorded at 2:27:36 a.m. associated with the, quote, hockomocksports.com web activity has a different tab ID number specifically, and he provides the different tab ID number. Thus, the records in question clearly establish that the, quote, hockomocksports.com, end quote, activity was conducted in a completely different tab than the search for how long to die in cold, which also showed activity at 2:27 a.m. just seconds later. Amazing. So, guys, this is concrete evidence that Jennifer McCabe made the search at 2:27 a.m. And before she made that search, she searched Hockomock Sports. She searched hockomocksports.com at 2:27:36 seconds. And she searched how long to die in the cold at 2:27:40 seconds. 4 seconds later. Like, is Jennifer McCabe a psychopath? How do you go from, I want to look up Hockomock Sports to, I want to see how long it's going to take John O'Keefe to die on the lawn? Anomaly number 3. The Commonwealth's experts, Ms. Hyde and Mr. Whiffen, opine that the 4028 record with the 2:27:40 a.m. timestamp initially would not have been associated with the, quote, how long to die in cold, end quote, search. I have examined the multiple writes of the 4028 record contained within the browserstate.db WAL file, and in all instances, the URL containing the, quote, how long to die in cold, end quote, was present. I see no evidence of the 4028 record containing a different or blank for that field. I think it's missing a word. Yeah, for that field. Okay. Okay, excellent. Anomaly number 4. The search artifacts associated with how long to die in cold, 2:27:40 a.m., how long die in CIKD, 6:23:51 a.m., and how long to die in cold, 6:24:18 a.m., are all missing information that would be expected in the history.db file. Mr. Whiffen opines that, quote, the load was likely never successful as it was never populated in the history.db database, end quote. However, the Google suggestion artifact for, quote, how long to digest food, end quote, appears at 6:23:49 a.m. along with a picture. This indicates that the cell phone in question had internet connectivity at the time of the 6:24 a.m. search, and contradicts Mr. Whiffen's speculative suggestion that the load did not complete. Excellent. And again, guys, if you remember the motion to exclude, Richard Green is responding to an allegation in that motion. And the allegation in that motion was that Jennifer McCabe was searching for how long to digest food, and that when you Google search how long to digest food, it automatically generates the how long TI die in CIKD. That's essentially what the prosecution was alleging in the motion to exclude Richard Green. And Richard Green counters that argument by saying, actually, it's not it's not the truth. However, the Google suggestion artifact for how long to digest food appears at 6:23:49 a.m. along with a picture. This indicates that the cell phone in question had internet connectivity at the time of the 6:24 a.m. search. So it's that it's that Jennifer McCabe search how long to digest food at 6:23:49 a.m. And then she searched how long to die in cold at 6:24:18 a.m. Two separate searches, not one and the same, which is what the prosecution alleged. Like as if the search auto-corrected and it came up to it's like, that's a really weird fucking auto-correction. Like you're searching how long to digest food and Google gives you results for how long TI die in CIKD. Like, all right. Thank you, Richard, for clarifying that bullshit. Continuing. Anomaly number 6. The knowledge information for the, quote, how long to die in cold, end quote, search appears to be out of order. Knowledge C. Sorry, forgot that letter earlier. Knowledge C artifacts typically run a few seconds after the event in question. For example, the plist time for, quote, how long TI die in CIKD, end quote, recorded at 6:23:51 a.m. has a corresponding knowledge C time entry of 6:23:57 a.m. 6 seconds later. Typically, the knowledge C artifact appears second after the plist entry. However, the 6:24:18 a.m. plist entry for, quote, how long to die in cold, end quote, is followed by a knowledge C time of 6:24:24 a.m. 6 seconds later for how long TI die in CIKD, end quote. The corresponding knowledge C entry for how long to die in cold does not show up until hours later at 10:33:35 a.m. This is unusual and deviates from what is typically observed. Yeah, that's quite the anomaly, guys. And guys, let's not forget Jennifer McCabe's husband, Matt McCabe. He's in IT work. He does computer work. I'm just saying, it's widely known at this point in the game that Matt McCabe was likely instructing Jennifer McCabe on what to do with her searches. But again, it takes a real forensic expert like Richard Green to discern between the bullshit, to discern between the attempt at covering up the real cell phone extraction data. Continuing, anomaly number 7, Trooper Nicholas Guarino's April 24, 2023 report shows that he took custody of the phone on February 2nd, 2022 at 12:08 p.m. However, the gray key log indicates that the device was not accessed for imaging until 2 hours later at February 2nd, 2022, 19:25:40. which is 7:25 p.m. Okay, and he writes the conversion, or converted locally to February 2nd, 2022 at 2:25 p.m. Okay, so it's military time UTC, but then it has to be converted to local time, and the local time is 2:25 p.m. And guys, if you remember the trial, Richard Green went over this, that extracting the data requires converting the timestamps, converting the time, not manipulating the time, but converting the time. Continuing, the report also indicates he was given the password to the phone. Nowhere within the report does it explain the time delay between receiving the device and imaging the device. Good. I'm going to read that again. Nowhere within the report does it explain the time delay between receiving the device and imaging the device. Continuing, number 20. In my opinion, based on a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that the 2:27:40 a.m. search artifact for, quote, "How Long to Die in Cold," end quote, was deleted by either deliberate user interaction or manual post-imaging manipulation of the day by some unknown individual. You hear that, guys? It's compelling. It's good stuff. Continuing, number 21. The methodology I used to evaluate the 2:27:40 a.m. search artifact for, quote, "How Long to Die in Cold," end quote, as described in this affidavit, is generally accepted in the digital forensic scientific community and is consistent with applicable National Institute of Standards and Technology guidelines, as shown in Digital Investigation Techniques, a NIST Scientific Foundation Review 2022, and is attached as Exhibit B. Signed and sworn to under the pains and penalties of perjury, this 27th day of January 2025, Richard Green. Excellent. Really good. And I love that he included the methodology, because to me, it's like stopping Hank Brennan in his tracks. Because remember, Hank Brennan was all over Dr. Marie Russell, repeatedly asking her, methodology, what was your methodology? There is no methodology, is there? And I love that Richard Green, and of course the defense, was proactive this time and included the methodology to shut Hank Brennan up before he speaks. Excellent affidavit from Richard Green. I am so impressed and grateful that the defense team found him. Guys, imagine if they didn't find Richard Green. Imagine if all this case had was Ian Whiffen or Hyde. I forget her first name. Like two so-called experts who did not behave like experts. Let's go to the pretrial hearing from today.
May it please the court, we filed a motion to exclude Mr. Green as a witness regarding 2 points. The first is a claim that a witness's phone made a search for a phrase to the effect of "How long to die in the cold" at 2:27 a.m. And secondly, to exclude an opinion that there was some type of intentional deletion.
Sorry, I keep looking at Karen Reed's dad looking at Hank Brennan. And that could just be Karen Reed's dad's resting face. But to me, it's almost like contempt, like like he's not happy with Hank Brennan, and I don't blame him. And if it were me, my facial expression would be a lot more telling Also, that's SD sitting next to Karen Reed's father. And I just want to say, guys, it's an excellent image, because when I was at the courthouse a couple weeks ago with the Karen Reed supporters, and I made a video about it, we went to Aiden Kearney's hearing because we were not allowed in the Superior Courthouse. SD confronted Hank Brennan outside, and I witnessed it. It was during the lunch break, and I wish I was recording it, guys. I wish I was recording it. After that day, I grew so much respect, so much more respect for SD, because I need to remember verbatim what she said, but Hank Brennan, it was like during a lunch break, everybody was leaving the courthouse. Hank Brennan was walking by himself, and he was walking down, I believe it was the ramp instead of the steps. And SD ran across the street to talk to him, and I could hear what she said to him. And she said, "You're going to make it a fair trial, right, Hank Brennan?" Because Hank Brennan was like swearing up and down when he first entered this case that he was going to make every effort to make it as fair a trial as possible. And he has proven himself to be a liar since those statements. And SD SD confronted him, and she was playful about it, and he even smiled. Okay, so it's like she was holding him accountable, but he even smiled. Even he got a chuckle out of it. Anyway, I have a lot more respect for SD than I already did. And I met SD that day at the courthouses and at the dinner that DJ from Calling All Beings put together. And SD was kind enough to take photos with me. But anyway, all that to say, SD is the real deal. She's a real activist. She will walk up to a prosecutor's face and push his own words back onto him. Loved it.
Of that entry. This case, I propose on behalf of the Commonwealth, is appropriate for a Lanigan hearing. At that Lanigan hearing, I suggest that Mr. Green should testify and answer questions about his affidavit and his opinions that he would like to subject the jury to. In fairness, the government would call an expert as well. If this case, as the court proposed, potentially scheduled for next week, Mr. Whiffen would not be available, but Ms. Hyde would be available, and I would call her as a witness. Mr. Whiffen, if necessary, is available later in the month as a witness. My suggestion is there should be two witnesses, Mr. Green and one witness from the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth witness will be able to explain the science, the data, forensic science, and methodology. And Mr. Green, I suspect, should be in a position to explain his ultimate opinions, because what we see in his affidavit is an absence of methodology. Mr. Green has filed two affidavits in this case. They are very similar, but there are very significant changes to those affidavits. And it stands out as very interesting, the changes to the affidavits, when I look at them.
And guys, a good thing I just read Richard Green's affidavit, and at the bottom of that affidavit, Richard Green expressed his methodology. And I said, good on him for being proactive. Good on the defense for being proactive, because we all saw what Hank Brennan did to Dr. Russell, swearing up and down that she did not use a methodology. But here's Hank Brennan again, even though Richard Green included his methodology in his affidavit, which, to be fair, Richard Green didn't really specify. He didn't go into the specifics of his methodology, but he did make it clear that his methodology is industry standard, and he provided an attachment. He provided an exhibit in his affidavit to back up the methodology. So for Hank Brennan to say outright that Richard Green did not include his methodology in the affidavit is incorrect. It's inaccurate.
On number 3, he changes his characterization of what his profession is. He originally calls himself a forensic technician, and then the updated affidavit cites that he's a computer network technician. Now that is odd, because usually a profession giving the simple explanation of what he does stands out. Also stands out when using technical terms. They either were wrong or changed from the first affidavit to the second affidavit. For example, number 9. He talks about the download as a full file system extraction, then changed to an Apple iOS full file system. My point is that when you look, this isn't simply misspellings or poor grammar. There are terms of art that are wrong between the affidavits or changed. When you're using the terminology of an item that is a forensic tool, such as gray key, it is spelled wrong throughout the affidavit. And so it seems to me that Mr. Green's affidavit had some assistance in building it. And the tone of the affidavit.
So, if you didn't hear, Hank Brennan is implying that the defense helped Richard Green write his affidavit, which, by the way, guys, is within their right. Of course, Richard Green can seek counsel's guidance while writing an affidavit. Anybody can obtain legal counsel to assist them in writing an affidavit. What is Hank Brennan's point?
Supports that thought. When we look at Mr. Green's affidavit, it is not that of a forensic examiner, it's that of an advocate for the defense. When we look at his affidavit, there is quite a bit of advocacy, and insinuations, and surmise, and conjecture, and claims that have no factual basis. But there is little on methodology. In ways
This is, guys, again, this is abusive on Hank Brennan's part. That was a thorough affidavit we just read together. And did you hear what Hank Brennan said about it? Did you hear how Hank Brennan summarized it? As if all those efforts Richard Green made, as if all those efforts, as if the scientific method is not, oh God, as if the scientific method, guys, as if the scientific method is not enough of a methodology for Hank Brennan. What the hell? Oh man, he's like the king of trolls, man. We gotta make t-shirts with Hank Brennan's face, and we gotta put a crown on him, and it's gotta read King of Trolls.
It's a very dangerous affidavit to simply make assaultive comments that a user did something, purposely deleted a very important phrase, how long to die in the cold, without any forensic data or evaluation or validation. Suggesting, but never proving, never providing fact, that there was some type of manipulation or tampering with evidence. Now, this is not the role of a forensic examiner unless there is proof, in fact, that happened. But when we look through his entire affidavit, we don't see any attachment of raw data. We don't see an updated report. We don't see any viable information that in any way supports his speculative accusations. And so the defense, without having an opportunity for Mr. Green prior to trial, stand behind these statements under oath, would like him simply to come before the jury, make these salacious comments, and then leave it to the government to knock it down. And that might be a common approach, reviewing the transcripts of this case, but the Commonwealth does not intend to simply let evidence come in that's not qualified, that's not factually sound, and then go knock down glass houses. That is not the...
It's what it is, guys, which is, again, an abusive tactic. What it is that Hank Brennan thinks he can just speak whatever reality he wants to exist, and that reality suddenly exists because Hank Brennan said so. It doesn't matter what the truth is. It doesn't matter how thorough Richard Green's efforts were. It doesn't matter how effective and thorough and scientifically driven that affidavit is. Hank Brennan is going to keep writing his own reality. Hank Brennan is going to keep projecting his own reality onto everybody else and completely avoid any accountability and completely avoid any inconvenient information that actually pertains to his reality. It's dangerous, guys, is what I'm saying. Like I've seen this kind of behavior before.
Approach the government's going to take to this case. Mr. Green's going to testify he should have a report that is factually based with methodology supporting these claims, these narratives that he's proposing. Considering testing in this case, there are certain tools that are used. The defense wants to propose that there is some type of race that Mr. Green looked at or used more tools than a Commonwealth expert. The tool is simply software. A good analogy is that of an X-ray. Anybody can take an X-ray, but it takes an expert then to interpret the X-ray, to interpret the data. In this case, Mr. Green, in his affidavit, proposes that because he used a number of tools, because he has a number of X-rays, that somehow there's significance to it. But what it lacks is a forensic analysis of that information. He cites two opinions. His first opinion is based on Cellbrite processing and Axiom processing. I'm not going to go through all the little details that we dispute or go through a technical assault on each point, although that may come at some point. But the overall idea of this evidence is why this should be subject to a Lanigan hearing and why we are willing to call our own expert as well, so that the record is clear and the science and data is clear. Instead of doing validation or testing, relying on Cellbrite, what Mr. Green has done in section number 13 of his affidavit is step aside from methodology, and instead he cites that he called Cellbrite technical service. Now, this is the forensic examiner who is supposed to go through the process, and yet he defers it to technical support of Cellbrite.
No, inaccurate, Hank Brennan. Again, guys, we read that affidavit. It's not that Richard Green relied on technical support. It's that Richard Green conducted the searches. Richard Green extracted the data. Richard Green verified the data using hash values. And to further verify the data, Richard Green contacted technical support to make sure that his conclusions coincide with the conclusions that technical support would have had. Just more mischaracterization of the facts.
Technical support in Cellbrite he relies on to say that this artifact where this search is stored is appropriate. And he remains standing on that foundation as why somehow there's some validation that this search occurred at 227. But then when he learns that Cellbrite, after actually doing analysis and study and updates and engage in methodology and review, determined that the way that was assessed is unreliable and the program has been updated, which no longer shows the 227 search at 227, and I'll explain why for good reason, and I'm sure the court has heard this before. Mr. Green then denounces the very source that he relies on. And so on one hand he's saying, I relied on technical assistance of Cellbrite, but then when they told me what I didn't like, I can ignore that part.
Again, guys, this is abuse of litigation. This is prosecutorial abuse. That is not what Richard Green declared in his own affidavit. This is complete and total mischaracterization of the facts.
He then defers to Axiom. Axiom, the defense touts, is a separate source that reinforces the same point when clearly it doesn't. You can see in number 14 of Mr. Green's affidavit, he talks about the fact he uses these different programs because he wants to view data. And that gets back to the X-ray analogy. He is viewing data from many different programs that say the same thing, but he never... What is troublesome about his affidavit in section 14 is he attempts to use resource material.
And guys, I'm not really sure why the video keeps skipping.
To convince this court that rather than methodology, these summary statements are something that the court should rely on. And so what he does is he takes an excerpt, page 7 of his affidavit, number 14, and he says that he reviews the Axiom user manual describing the artifact as follows, that the artifact is in Safari suspended state tabs, and then has a last interaction date time, and the date and time of the current tab state when it was last interacted with on the local device. And so he's taking a piece of the manual. They don't introduce the manual. And he tries to use that to buttress that this search happened at 227. What you're not offered is that in the Axiom notes, in their artifact reference guide for the description of Safari suspended state tabs, which he's referring to, and this is the death knell, really, for the analogy that the defense tries to make. The Safari suspended tabs contains the current state of each browser tab in Safari that is currently open on the local device. The date and time are only updated when the user interacts with that tab on the local device. Since these are local tab states, results from the artifact may contain an earlier date and time compared to the results in the Safari history artifact if iCloud Safari synchronization is enabled across multiple devices on one iCloud account. And so, by Axiom itself, it makes clear that an artifact in a tab can reflect a time that is much earlier than the...
Guys, you just heard that part. Hank Brennan took it upon himself to use the court's time to read aloud what Axiom allegedly says, that if you're searching, if you're trying to find out when a search was made, an earlier version of the search could appear like as an error. Like instead of referring to the affidavit, instead of referring to the scientific method that Richard Green exercised, he executed, instead of Hank Brennan sticking to the facts of the case and the facts of what Richard Green declared in his affidavit, Hank Brennan wants to insert into this allegedly a statement from Axiom pertaining to finding out when searches are made and how some searches can be can create errors. Like it's not okay, guys. It's Hank Brennan again overwriting reality with Hank Brennan's convenient version of reality. Hank Brennan is not sticking to the facts. Hank Brennan wants to have the last word, and he wants to keep feeding the world, everybody watching this case. Hank Brennan wants to keep feeding everybody with false information, with irrelevant information, that if he would just stick to the affidavit, if he would just stick to what Richard Green completed thoroughly, then Hank Brennan would have all the answers that he's looking for. But it's clear that Hank Brennan is not looking for answers. Hank Brennan is using all of this, just like he used the Daubert hearing. He's using this airtime to plant false seeds of the reality that Hank Brennan wants. It's almost like subliminal messaging. Hank Brennan is manipulating everybody with his bullshit information.
Actual search. And this has been presented to the court, and we've provided the trial transcripts of Ms. Hyde and Mr. Whiffen. when a tab is open, many tabs can be open, it is open at a particular time. And if that tab is reused, the original time will imprint. And so, certain instances of the opinions makes mention of them in his report, and yet he does nothing as far as validation to consider the arguments and dispel them. He does nothing in his affidavit to address the methodology. Quite to the contrary, when you see Mr. Whiffen and Ms. Hyde's reports, it isn't baseless opinions and advocacy aside. When you look at their reports, it is replete with methodology, fact-based, information-based, the study of the particular device at hand. The contrast between the actual use of methodology that is reflected in Ms. Hyde and Mr. Whiffen's report and this affidavit is so clear. Now, there are two opinions.
It's wrong, guys. This is wrong. Again, I said it in my last video that in my opinion, Hank Brennan's bar license should be revoked, and I still stand behind that statement. I don't think anybody should be represented by Hank Brennan. I don't think Hank Brennan should be practicing law. This guy can't stick to the truth. Hank Brennan is allergic to the truth with how much he avoids it, how much he attempts to manipulate it, how much he attempts to gaslight all of us.
That are proposed pursuant to this affidavit. The first is the claim that How Long to Die in the Cold was somehow inputted at 2:27. The only effort that appears in this affidavit by Mr. Green is in section 15, where he did a low-level analysis of the wall file. Now, I am not an expert, and that's why the court should hear from Ms. Hyde or Mr. Whiffen and Mr. Green. But a simple understanding of the data science is that the wall file can contain information as a repository. And the description or misunderstanding by Mr. Green of the wall file is clear in his affidavit. In fact, he implies that there were 3 searches in his affidavit, number 16, when almost everybody universally agrees who's looked at this phone that there were 2. And so there's no surprise that his second opinion is an attempt really just to create confusion, to disparage, and to make claims that are factually untrue.
Yeah, and that entire last sentence was pure projection on Hank Brennan's part. When Hank Brennan describes Richard Green like that, Hank Brennan is actually referring to himself. Hank Brennan lies. Hank Brennan misleads.
It's necessary to have this claim because, number one, it doesn't have any resonance. There's no methodology to support number one. So, of course, the fallback is somebody...
It's like, guys, like that's forever going to be Hank Brennan's strategy with any case. Methodology. And when you give him the methodology, he still says you had no methodology.
It's something, somewhere, somehow. Not an uncommon refrain that we hear. And so what the claim, or the opinion number 2, the defense would like the jury to hear, is that somebody somehow, whether it was a person, presumably the witness in this case, or the police somehow manipulated the phone. I dare say there's no evidence to support that. And yet, in an affidavit under oath to the court, in an attempt of advocacy, this witness is comfortable and willing to promote a claim that has no factual basis. If a witness, an expert, is going to promote in an affidavit a claim with no factual basis, we should not trust, without vetting that witness, that their other claims have any merit or value.
Again, Hank Brennan doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
Opinion number 2. This expert, so-called expert, takes the liberty to say that the McCabe cell phone could have been manipulated. Not that it was, not that I did a study, not that I have a fact. It could have been manipulated, then rehashed after manipulation with an extraordinary conspiracy in the world of forensic science to be able to accomplish all of those tasks. So if he has no basis in fact or methodology, no good faith basis to make this assertion, why is he? Why is he? It is because the claims he makes in opinion number one are so scientifically and forensically unsound. This is a tactic to confuse the issue.
I don't know how Hank Brennan made it past the bar exam. I don't know how Hank Brennan was smart enough to pass the bar exam if he doesn't understand the scientific method.
And think about the import of this baseless claim by Mr. Green. It is suggesting that a witness with no other evidence whatsoever was involved in a conspiracy to murder somebody. That's the implication that he wants the jury to be confused by. Otherwise, there'd be no other reason to make the suggestion. That is an extraordinarily harsh claim when you don't have any facts to back it up. Now, how could one...
I don't know if you guys can see Karen Reed's dad. Look at that smirk. I hope he's thinking the same thing I'm thinking. Like, this guy is full of shit. And again, he needs a fucking mirror.
Manipulation, there is scientific ways that could be explained how manipulation could occur. But we don't see any of that in this affidavit because it didn't exist in this case. Because there was no deletion or manipulation by the witness. There was no manipulation by the police who processed this phone. If there was, there would be some...
Again, guys, this is Hank Brennan's airtime. This is Hank Brennan's opportunity to say all those conspiracy theories, all those countering arguments that suggest the MSP were up to no good or that the prosecution was up to no good. None of that is true. This is Hank Brennan, again, feeding lies into the ears of all of us following this case so that he can hopefully, to him, confuse people about this case. And I told you guys in a previous video what happens when multiple different versions of an issue are fed into social media or are fed into the airwaves. People who can't discern or can't decide what are facts and what are not, or when things appear to be polar opposites, people just give up. They're like, I don't know if this is real or not. I can't determine, like, how could this be a cover up? Like, why would cops do that? Why would prosecutors do that? Like, maybe Hank Brennan's telling the truth. Like, this is what Hank Brennan knows he's achieving in one way or another. But again, guys, the court of public opinion already decided that Karen Reed is not guilty. And Hank Brennan, this is Hank Brennan's furthering desperate attempt to win the public opinion back. But he's going to fail because he is such an overt, blatant, and offensive liar.
This affidavit speaks volumes by the absence of fact in data and science.
Like, it doesn't matter how much you say something is unscientific. If it's using the scientific method, you got to pick a different word. Hank Brennan is taking something that is rather scientific and he's describing it as unscientific.
Mr. Green does nothing to try to demonstrate that there was user deletion on this phone or that there was manipulation by the police. When you look at the data in the phone, the question arises, why is there a 624 search and not a 623 search? The phone stores the last entry into the tab. It's not just science, it's common sense.
Yeah, again, guys, multiple times Hank Brennan has made the effort, the attempt to testify as an expert when it came to Dr. Russell and now when it comes to Richard Green. Hank Brennan is taking the testimony, the declarations from these experts, and he is claiming he knows better than they do.
And that Mr. Green ignores. And so not being able to prove user manipulation because it didn't happen, he turns to police manipulation. And he says that he complains that he did not receive the PDF when he received the download. And because there was a production at different times, he then sprints out into a different universe and suggests that somehow it must be because there's manipulation.
Into a different universe, guys. Into a different universe. The guy who is literally existing in his own reality by himself, Hank Brennan, is accusing someone else of being in a different universe. The gall.
Again, doesn't prove it. There's actually ways that a real forensic examiner can look at the PDF, gray key file, and the phone and determine whether manipulation occurred. There's a program called XMP and another one called Magic. Most expert witnesses went through that process. No manipulation. But Mr. Green doesn't even go through the process to disprove his own theories. If he used methodology, he could simply dispel his own claims. It's either he doesn't understand the forensic technology to do that, or he chooses not to do it so he can just posit hand grenades throughout the case and let them resonate wherever they fall.
Hank Brennan, again, this is all going to bite you in the ass. I said it in the last video. I don't know how Hank Brennan expects to go out in public when this case is over. Because, again, he is such a liar. And he's an abusive attorney here. He's an abusive prosecutor here.
In an attempt to create some doubt or uncertainty or merit some conspiracy, he lists a number of what he calls anomalies, which are really not anomalies at all. I could go through each one of them. I could give a difference of opinion. I could show that Mr. Green's anomalies have no basis in fact, but suffice to say, I think this should be done by qualified experts, and that's why there should be a Lanigan hearing. There is such misunderstanding of forensic science in Mr. Green's claims and anomalies. If he's going to make these assertions before it goes before a jury, he should sit in the witness seat under oath, as the Commonwealth witnesses should as well, and he should justify and explain to the court why he did not engage in methodology and how he has come to these extraordinarily baseless, inaccurate, and prejudicial claims. Commonwealth the court has to look at Lanigan and whether or not a hearing is appropriate in this case. When we look at the different non-binding factors of Lanigan, we look at number one, whether it has been generally accepted in the scientific community. The software has been generally accepted in the scientific community. So hasn't the effort of a forensic examiner, the expertise. And the defense complains in their motion the Commonwealth has not properly addressed the methodology of Mr. Green. Well, the reason why is Mr. Green does not provide any methodology. So this is the way to address the methodology. Number two, the opinions have been or can be subjected to testing. Well, we see Ms. Hyde and Mr. Whiffin's report directly contradict the assertions, the unsupported assertions of Mr. Green. There is no testing that his opinions have been subjected to. There is no peer review. There is no other alternative support for his opinions. They're just broad, baseless claims. Number three, has been subjected to peer review and publication.
You know what? It's as if Hank Brennan studied propaganda. You know how, like, a lot of time governments use propaganda to manipulate their societies and to get their people to do what they want. It's as if Hank Brennan studied propaganda. And Hank Brennan knows that if you repeat a lie long enough, some people will believe it.
Certainly the science, the forensic science has, the software has, but the interpretation and Mr. Green's interpretations, it hasn't been subjected to anything. In fact, it changes. Has an unacceptably high known potential rate.
That, again, that was an outright lie. It does not change. In fact, Hank Brennan received the same result at least 5 different times from 5 different tests because Richard Green conducted a scientific experiment using the scientific method. Richard Green has actual scientific certainty that Jennifer McCabe made that search at 2:27 a.m. Unlike Ian Whiffen, who did not even use hash verified data.
Error. Well, if we see and read Ms. Hyde and Mr. Whiffen's report, it's not just a high level of error, it's gross error, it's total error. It's wrong. And is governed by recognized standards. Well, if you look at the history report that the defense filed as an attachment, it talks about a forensic examiner's obligations to verify, to test. Things that Mr. Green didn't do. Their own report that they offer in support undermines the idea that Mr. Green did anything to validate or support his opinion. And as we see from both Selbright, he does not follow the protocol. He does not follow Axiom or the guidance that they give him. He sidesteps both of them to give the opinion he wants to advocate for the defense.
Again, guys, not the truth. I will have to make a part 3. Not the truth at all. Richard Green sidestepped. Oh my gosh, Hank Brennan, you are the master of sidestepping. All right. Oh God. I told you guys I'm gonna need therapy when this is all over. And I want you all to know that this is really toxic for you too. To hear Hank Brennan take the truth and erase it and rewrite the truth with his version of reality. It is toxic for all of us. It's not okay. It's not okay. And I want you all to know that we are in a reality that Hank Brennan wants no part in, okay? Don't let Hank Brennan pull you into his psychopathic reality, okay, guys? Stay in the reality we all know that is based on scientific certainty, not Hank Brennan's mischaracterization, malicious mischaracterization. Thank you for watching.